Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Teaching Through Conversation, where we continue to grapple with challenging issues that we face as the society, as the church. Now, being in the Children and Youth Month, we take this moment to have this special episode where we look at the role that families play in the raising of children and shaping them for the future, beyond just giving them gifts and leaving the upbringing of children to the church or even the schools. But what role can the family play, or how does that impact the upbringing of the child? And I've got with me the Reverend Mzwandile Molo. Good evening, sir, and welcome to you.
Evening, Fundisi. Welcome, greetings to everybody. Thank you again for allowing me to be part of this conversation.
Yes, just to kickstart this, what would you say are the important values that families can instill in the upbringing of children, in shaping them to be responsible adults in the future?
My view is that every being has a foundational place where you are shaped and you are made.
Definitely.
And that foundational place is the place where you have an initial encounter with the world. And that encounter with the world teaches you what the world is and what the world is about, and what values emerge from that.
Okay.
And therefore, as a child, as a young person, your first point of encounter with the world really is family. If you can imagine this, the first voices that a child gets used to are the voices of the parent. And by that I don't mean biological. I mean that person who is the one that in your own system, you might not know the word mama, what it means. You might not know what the word tata means. But those voices and those faces, the first voices that you hear, the faces that you get to know are of these persons. Because they're the most consistent ones. They are the most, anybody who comes in the house comes and leaves. But the voice and the faces that you see apart. So, consistent behavior, consistent language begins to be the frame under which you construct. Remember, as a child, you receive. So you are constructing meaning out of everything else. What does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to be in pain? What does it mean to not to be cared for? What does it mean to be loved? All those things, you absorb them. You don't give them the word love, you don't give the word loneliness, but you feel them. So at the first point of the teaching of any child, or formation of any child, is to realize that the family is the place of consistency, is the place of consistent teaching. And therefore, if we are consistent in hate, that's what the child is going to receive. If we are consistent in being cold, that's what the child is going to get. If we are consistent in anger, that's what the child is going to get. But if we then consistent, one, in presence, because presence denotes dependability. So if I as a child know you are there, I know you are there, so I can depend on that. So if I'm hungry, I can cry out for you and I know you are there. The crying out is seeking attention. So the first gift you can give to any person, especially a child, is consistency and dependability that comes from being present. And and I always tell people that let's make a difference between presence and presence. Because presence are things we give. Presence is our own availability, is our own being there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is our behavior in the presence of this person, this child, who is absorbing, who's getting, who's picking up. If we are consistent in being tender, they take tenderness as the way of being. If we are consistent in being loving and nurturing, they won't know the words. These words are going to come later. But if you're consistent in nurturing and in loving, that's what happens then. So the best way to instill values is to live and behave those values
I like that.
with the children.
I like that, Reverend Molo, when you talk about the child absorbing, because they can actually even absorb. I think I read somewhere that you will find that the way people turn out to be, whether they become this cold without emotions, it's what they have experienced as a child. So when, like you said, when they experience this tenderness, this loving, the attention, they will also be able to express it in their when they grow up. But then also overly being present as a parent, what can they do to a child?
Let me just take components from where you left. I normally make the example to people when they baptize, and I speak to them as parents. If you want to know how the children interpret their parents, it's a pity we do not know have that game. We had what Mantwana in Tswana.
Yes.
Yeah. Watch how kids, if the one chooses to be the father, if the one chooses to be the mother, you're going to see in how they act out their parents.
Yeah.
If this one
subconsciously,
not even overtly, when they come, if in this house there's abuse of alcohol, and it's always on Fridays, you're going to see this young boy who acts as the father. If the father's the one drinking, the boy's going to go out and say, "Hey, it's Friday today," and he'll be walking around stumbling because he knows that's what the father does. So if the mother is a shouting person, you look at the child when they play out being the mother and they shout at everybody else, then you can see that this is how they experience and absorb. And you think they're not watching, you think they're not seeing, but they absorb. Therefore, that kind of unconscious behavior, that unthinking behavior, is the greatest moment of teaching. Because you are not thinking, you're just acting. And normally that is the most consistent way of being. Because that one you are not thinking. But when you think it over, when you say, oh, the children are here, so I must not do this, then they see that, they pick that up. Now, in terms of the issue that you raise, I'm not quite sure what will overly present mean. Because for me, being present is when your child knows that they can depend on you.
Certainly, like I'm referring to, when we have babies, that immediately when they cry, you are there. Remember, children also get to learn us as parents that, okay, she is fed or he's fed, he's dry, she's dry, you've done everything, but they know immediately when they cry, you will be jumping. What good can that do, or what bad can that do?
That's a very interesting question, because the question that needs to be asked then is not whether the child is playing the game or not. It will be what prompts that.
Okay.
Does the child need attention? And what we mean by attention, it might not be food. It might not be changing of nappy. It might be something else. So we need to get ourselves, well, what does it mean? Why would this child seek attention? Now, there could be issues of attachment. That's clear. So a child might be attached to the mother, to whoever that is. So we need to deal with that. But I think the issue that you are raising is one that says part of the growing up of children is the ability to learn independence.
Of course.
And part of that is a journey. It's a journey of give and take. It's a journey of allowing the child to express themselves. And as they express themselves, there are things that they will do, and sometimes they will. The way that we were brought up is that sometimes you are left to kind of stumble and fall, so that you learn to be independent. Because part of the forming of children is not only to pass values, which is important, and to kind of make the point you're making, the values of love. There's no much more powerful being than a being who does not seek to be loved, who knows they are loved. If there's any gift that any parent can give their child, is that gift that simply says to your child, you don't need to prove anything to anybody.
You are loved.
You are loved the way you are. And therefore, once you give that gift to the child, you give them a wonderful foundation to build on it. Because they are going to enter into a world that is going to be critical to them. It's going to be a world that reminds them they're not sufficient. The world that's going to tell them that they are not it. The world that's going to tell them they're not as successful as they are. But if they can have this deep sense
of knowing that they
I
are
am
loved
loved.
just for who they are.
And I don't need to prove anything. And I say to people, if you look at Jesus, and list according to Luke, even before he does anything, he comes back from the desert with all the temptations that comes with it. And what does he hear? This is my beloved son, in whom I am pleased. Sometimes parents confuse pride with love. We love our children when they do something big, something great. That's the only time we want them to know that they're loved. That is not love, that is pride.
That is pride. You pride yourself.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, my son, or my child. And what happens is that then children equate our love in them with the things we do.
Yeah. And again, the mistake that we do as parents, we, instead of giving that pure love for loving a child for who they are, we seem to, perhaps because we know that we're not giving that much love, that necessary love, then we compensate with gifts. We allow material things to parent our children. And that now brings me to a question of emotional support versus financial support. What can that do to a child's development?
Let's just be nice to parents.
Okay.
The world we live in, especially if you live as a middle class parent, your time is always in competition. Something wants your time,
Of course.
whatever that is. And work becomes that because you need to achieve things. You come back, you need to be the wife that you need to be for your mother. The church wants its own time. You need to go to church meetings. So we live in these highly competitive times that we live in the world. And therefore that extracts time from us. That takes away time from us. And what that does then is to say to ourselves, where do we pay for that in terms of time? And sometimes parenting becomes the place, because we can get a nanny, we can get somebody who's going to an au pair to take the child. So we can do all these kind of things. And that creates then the sense that we are managing these things. And we want them to happen right. Now, that is the pressure we live in. And I don't want, and it's not even about intention not to care. Because in your system you've planned. There's a nanny and there's an au pair there who's going to take that. One of the things that I normally start telling parents who come for my baptismal classes is that I've heard a child one time who says the mother is angry with the child. And the mother says, hey, when I shut up, you're going to eat. And the child says, Auntie is the name.
Yeah.
So, because the child has a much more closer relationship with the nanny than you as the parent. So therefore, you even think they can report you to the nanny because the real parent is that one when you are here at this time. So we need therefore to accept that as a challenge and therefore deliberately plan as parents to give time to the child. To give time to the child as a gift, as an offering, as a way of being present in their life. And sometimes that time doesn't only begin and saying, now I've got an hour with you. It starts with the simple conversations you have. When the child comes from school, if you are there collecting the child, how many times, how was school? Who are your friends? What are the conversations you're having about? Wow, that's a great, so that the child knows that their story in your life matters. That what they go through at school matters. So then in that sense, then you give time as an offering. Not for you to tell the child how tired you are. Not for you to tell the child that I'm working hard for you to go to school. Not to tell the child that you are here because I'm paying so much money for the school they're at. But to offer the child your time. Not only your time then, offer your child your heart. Let the child know you, rather know the things that you give them.
Yes.
So if the child knows you, they know whatever gifts come are a reflection of you. Now they're children. They'll be impressed by that. They'll want that, they'll want that. They'll want to eat sushi, they'll want to eat that or whatever. All those kind of things. They are impressed by that. Because all of us, we get drawn by what society does.
Yeah.
But if they know your heart, they also know your no.
Exactly.
Not as a denial,
Yeah.
but as a contribution that says, that's not good for you. I don't think that's right for you. And sometimes our no's must be accompanied by conversation. When I grew up, when my mother said no, that was sufficient. We teach these children to be creative, to be intuitive. How do you want them to solve a mathematical equation? I don't want to solve your no. If you see,
No, it doesn't.
you say to them, go
Yeah.
to school, and they are told how to solve mathematical equations. So they say x minus c 2x plus y, whatever. So that's what they must do. So their brains are taught to solve, not to accept obvious answers.
Yes.
But when it comes to your relationship, you simply want to say no. And then the child says, no.
Yeah.
There's a mathematical equation, how do we solve this? So those are kind of things that you go loving them. Respect.
Yes.
There is no child that is as spoiled as a child does not know what it is to respect. Because the lack of knowledge of respect is a lack of knowledge of boundaries.
Exactly. In fact, someone said, when we were at MCYU come together, said that parents need to heal and young generation needs to learn respect.
Exactly. And respect is also reflective of how you see yourself. So teaching the child to respect is forming that child so that that child knows their own boundaries, and they know that their behavior have consequences to others. And that's why you have respect. You have respect because you know if I behave in a certain way, that behavior has potential to hurt,
someone
to
else.
build, whatever. And I do not want to see myself as a head.
Yeah.
I want to see myself as being indifferent to other people's feelings. So part of that journey is to simply say, teach respect not only as a restraint, but respect as something that says, when I respect, I become the best of who I can be. There's something in me that honors other people. There's something in me that's able to say, if I cross a boundary, whatever the boundary is, because disrespect is crossing a boundary somewhere, whether in words or in action. But if you learn to say, actually, teachings of respect is learning to say, how do I honor myself and how do I honor other people? And therefore you teach that and say you give that to the child. The other big value that I have is mutuality. Part of being a child is learn how you depend on others. How you are a social being. How do I learn?
In connection with
Exactly. How do I learn? From the moment that I needed to be fed, my mother had to feed me. From the minute I needed to be clothed, auntie is going to clothe me. And from the minute I need to be taught, a teacher is going to teach me.
Yeah.
So we are living in mutuality. So teaching the child, not exceptionalism.
Yes.
and I know many parents are going to find difficult to have this concept. We all want our child to be the exception. We all want our child to be the one on top of the class.
Yeah.
And therefore we create this sense that they can't be satisfied unless they're on top.
My goodness.
They must be these unique ones. When they come into the room, everybody must know that there's this unique being.
Yeah.
Life is not like that.
Definitely.
For us Christians, God is not like that. God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Community.
So, teaching our young people to know the reality of mutuality.
And I want even to push it further, Reverend Molo, and talk about teaching our children to have empathy,
Yes.
to be compassionate.
Yes.
And for me, that speaks to the difference that comes with our generation, my generation, when we raise our own children versus to the way I was raised. We have turned out differently, even though our mothers, our parents at that time did not have much time as themselves as well. They were like, my parents were domestic workers. Like my father was working for white people, my mother was working for white people. But then I don't remember them making that time, but they would make that time, you know, and they would not sit and say, now this is what we are doing, but they would instill those values. And as you've said, as parents as well, current parents of this century, we are busy. And somehow, because we are managing and we've got money, you know, to help us to manage certain things. But then I see our children slipping, you know, out of our hands, that they lack that respect, they lack integrity, they lack empathy for others, they have no compassion. But is that something that one has to sit someone down and say, now I'm teaching you to be compassionate? Or it's something that they learn from when we feed them, when we, you know, change nappies?
That's why I'm using the word mutuality, because when I know we are mutual beings, when I know I depend on you, not as a servant, but as a contributor to my being, I then have to learn to listen to you. Because that's what empathy is. That's what solidarity is. That I must. Your life must matter enough for me to stop and listen. And what happens is, in the world we live in right now, unfortunately, the biggest contestation in my time for parents was playing. You go out and play outside there, and then you get to Natandu Dala. Then radio came in. So then the next contestation, the parent must contest with radio, especially during certain times. If it's top 30 on Saturday morning, you are listening to top 30, and whatever your mother or your father says, you are busy with top 30, whatever that is. Then came television. Not only television, because there was a time when television was closed at 6 to whatever time. Then came cable TV.
Oh, it was not always running throughout.
No.
I think I remember.
It was a certain time it closes.
Yeah.
We sing the national anthem,
Yeah.
and it leaves with that kind of thing there for the whole day.
Even the radio, right?
Yes, the radio says something. So it comes back tomorrow at 6 a.m. It comes back in again. Now remember, it was at that time, literally speaking, it would be that it was 1 or 2 channels. It was 1 channel initially for television. So the old people are watching, I think they're watching their Dallases, if they watch Dallas, whatever. So that's what happened. So as a child, you get bored out of that. Now cable television comes. When cable television comes, you've got 30, 40 channels. 40, 30 channels, you've got...
Taking away from your time.
Not only that, you can't even be in the same room.
Okay. Oh, because now you've got different TVs.
You've got different TVs that you can go there, you can watch Channel O if you want to.
Yeah.
There was a time, sometime it was Sweet 16, when everybody was watching Sweet 16, which would have been parties that people were throwing for their 16-year-olds. So all of that then, now that the point I'm making is, you come then with that contestation. Now comes social media. with its own contestation. So you could be sitting at the same table, yet people are having
In
20
different
conversations at the same time. So all of that creates a serious challenge for what it is to be a parent. Now, remember now, because of this whole thing of social media, you get access to certain information that even the parents don't have. Everybody, I discovered there's something called Swifties. You might not know what Swifties are. Clearly, you haven't taught your mother what Swifties are. Swifties are the supporters of Taylor Swift.
Yes.
They follow Taylor Swift on about what she eats, what she looks like, what she dresses, the songs.
I think you guys told me about that.
Taylor Swift, I think so.
Yeah, so that the followers are called Swifties.
Yeah.
And she's got followers who are 7, 8-year-old to 19, 20-year-olds. And she shapes how they see the world.
Exactly.
There was this movie about a doll that was big in the last year or two, just forgotten its name now. What I'm getting to is there's a lot of contestation of attention and entertainment. If your child is left on their own without your engagement, there's a formation that takes place without you.
Sure. Scary.
And when that formation happens, and unfortunately, you become a parent at the time of anger rather than the time of growth. Because you appear when something wrong has happened, and boom, you shout. And you're shouting to a child, and this happens to fathers. Fathers who don't spend time with the child. They're not known by the child except this Father Christmas person who comes once. If I need shoes, I go there, I need shoes. If I need something, gift, I go there, and all there. And the mother does not know what to do with me. And she says, and this guy comes in with this macho.
Yeah.
And deep down, the child looks at you and says, who are you?
Do you think you are?
Yes, I know you are I know your title is father, but who are you?
Yeah.
Because there is no bond, there's no relationship that has been built. And because there's no relationship, values have no foundations of transmission.
My goodness.
Values become things we use to make children feel guilty.
To reprimand.
You are unruly, you don't understand. You are unruly, whatever else that comes with that.
So formation, what you're saying is very crucial, Reverend Molo, and it actually scares me that formation is an ongoing thing in a child.
For sure.
In and outside the school, in and outside the church.
Yes.
And often as parents, and I'm glad that you've mentioned that because I've seen that male parents are scared sometimes to have certain conversation with children. Because like you said, behind the closed door in the bedroom, a child is being formed through social media. If you are not going to be open enough to have that conversation with your child.
To also navigate access.
What do you mean by that?
It is irresponsible to allow an 8-year-old to have access to YouTube without any navigation.
Okay. And in fact, these phones that we buy them at least have those.
Exactly.
They allow us to block certain channels.
I don't want to go to gory stories. There are many girls who have been drawn away from their homes into malls for human trafficking. Because the stranger out there is able to reach your child whilst your child is at home.
While your child is here with you.
Exactly. They're able to reach the child. So how do you navigate that? And the strangers, the people who target young people, look for the lonely ones. Look for the ones who feel like their parents don't care. And therefore, you buy this child gifts, you buy all these kind of things, yet the child feels empty inside because the child does not connect with you. The child does not think their life is important to you, doesn't think that they matter to you. So
you
how
get
do
someone who just say, you are so beautiful,
Exactly.
I love you.
Exactly. Because you see, you write in your status, I'm so lonely, my parents don't care, they are all over the place, they come here, whatever. So you write that, the child writes that in their status, whatever. Somebody else is watching. And they see that, and then they offer a way out. So the formation then, let me repeat, the primary foundation for any child's formation is the family.
It's the family.
The school supplements, the church complements.
Okay.
The fundamental place
It's
is
home.
home. At home, that's where I am going to be the most vulnerable. At home, I need to know at home, it is not a sin to make a mistake. I need to know that.
Actually, it's a place for me to make mistakes and then learn from my mistakes.
Exactly. Secondly, it is a place to know that I am worth something. It's a place to know that being truthful is the only remedy to wrong.
Yeah.
And being truthful will not consequence further. In other words, your only way out of a bad situation is to tell the
It's
truth.
being truthful, because that's what I often say. Tell the truth, then we deal with it.
Not only that, if you tell me the truth, I will not be as angry with you
That's what I say.
as I could be.
Yeah.
And in other words, make truth be worthwhile.
Bearable. Yeah.
Make it something that somebody can say, no matter how bad I've messed up, I know if I tell the truth, here the truth has currency.
Yes.
The truth is not a fishing expedition for my parents to be more angry with me. I tell the truth and I place the truth.
Yes.
Parents need to know this other truth. Stop trying to be superwoman to your children. They need to know you're human.
Yeah.
They need to know that you have made mistakes. They should know your own vulnerability so that when they feel vulnerable, they don't have to go somewhere else. They need to come to you and say, I don't know why, but this boy said I'm ugly and I felt I am ugly.
I like what you're saying, because you just repeated what I said to the class leaders. I said, if you're not going to be vulnerable in the presence of those you lead, how do you expect them to be vulnerable to say, I'm struggling with 1, 2, 3?
Exactly. So how do you teach your daughter, engage your daughter with this big idea? I met this boy and he kissed me and my knees felt a certain way. I've never felt like that before. My body is responding to this thing. I do not know what it means. How do you engage your child with that without having the hysteria of over-sexualizing the conversation she's bringing? How do you engage with her to know? Actually, those are natural feelings.
Yeah.
They are natural feelings because then you have a conversation. What do you think of him when he's not with you? I might think that, I feel like that. Actually, that's how I felt with my first boyfriend, or that's how I felt with your dad, whoever I was trying to talk about. Let's have that conversation. Let's bring those feelings up and let's agree that there's nothing bad about those feelings. There's nothing wrong about those feelings. The question is, what do we do with them?
Yes.
Because
How do we respond?
there are consequences.
Yeah.
There are consequences on acting on this thing. So it's not unnatural. Is it the right time? Is it the best moment? What are the possible consequences around this thing? So by the way, part of life is self-control.
Yeah. Instead of saying when you play with boys, you have a child.
Part of the truth is all of us must learn this thing called self-control.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, if you eat too much chocolate without control, you run the risk of diabetes. So self-control is part of maturity. Part of being matured is to allow yourself not to take that you don't need. It's to allow yourself to postpone. It is to allow yourself to say, I don't need to do it right now. That's part of being a matured human being. You might be hungry. You might be seeing that apple that you want to eat. But part of being matured is to accept to yourself. Self-control, self-mastery. Exactly, self-mastery. Self-mastery is about being matured. So one of the things that we all must learn to teach ourselves, there are times that I go to the shops and I see a Gucci bag.
You see?
I see a Gucci bag.
Okay.
And I must learn to say no.
I don't need it for now.
I don't need it.
Yeah.
And then, so part of that conversation then is about self-control. Is about not allowing to be overwhelmed by feelings. It's not to allow yourself to be overwhelmed by the moment. There's nothing wrong with the moment. So it allows you then to let the child grow. And then rather than feeling bad about that, and then maybe the next time say, today it was bad. You wanted me to do this. And I just like, no, I don't. That's how rather than saying, hey, why did you go with him to his mother's house? Or that you can have that conversation later. And say, and then you realize that you might have compromised yourself. Because if you went there and you didn't want to do this thing, you are in a position where you're now being compromised by it. So teaching the child self-control, teaching the child self-reliance, not in a selfish way, but in that thing that allows me to say, I can do things, I can be a contributor, I can be one who shapes my world as a contributor. Remember, we talked about mutuality before. So all those things that children learn, and they learn in playing, they learn in conversation. You see how do you teach them? Sometimes you play games. You put a board game where you share with one another. You say, okay, you're part of the team. You're part of that. Then there was a time where there was a time called the Pictionary or charades. Charades is you can't win charades on your own. You need to act out, and other people must guess what you're acting out. So that's how you. So that you create learning moments in conversation. And then talk to them. They say today at school, Ubani said this and this and this. I say, how did you feel, Nana? I felt angry. And then you build on that. That kind of action is not being compassionate. That's a little bit selfish for somebody to do that. So through that moment,
so make sure that you do not do the same.
Exactly. So you build up in the conversation. They see you when you are angry, how you respond. They see, okay, Mama responds like this. Tata responds like that, where they are tatas. Because the truth is, in South Africa, 62% of families are single parent. So the point I'm making is, you form the child in honesty. You don't form the child because they're perfect.
Yes.
You form the child because you instill these values by words, by behavior, and by being present in the life of the child. That's how you do that. And then how do you teach them about God? You teach them about God by allowing your conversations to be inspired by God. Both in terms of direct reference to God, reading of scripture from time to time.
I actually wanted to go there to say, the generation of now, even though our parents did not have much time, but the one thing they would always make time for was the word of God in the home.
Yes.
That's why we did not only learn to resuscitate scriptures from school, that time biblical studies was allowed, but then from home as well, even to pray.
That's actually a very interesting little thing to do, especially for abefundisi, and I'm saying this because we're fundis. I haven't done a study, but I have observed enough to know one of the most anomalies of life is that I've never been fundis don't necessarily love the church. Nor do they necessarily.
I know, we've seen it growing up, and I was like, I hope my children are not going to be like that.
And sometimes not necessarily love reading scripture. Because they've seen that as a burden to carry.
Yeah.
That at home, Gnali Jerry Mujwalo translate Nathan to be Jesus in command. What scripture, what verse is that?
They are expected to be in a certain way.
Exactly. So it becomes a burden that they endure until they can get away from it. Even prayer, it becomes such a burden that children end up like, yo. And then they start saying, oh, highly mama, yo. It's going to be, Mama is opening up the tapela. How do you make sure that the God language is not an oppressive language? The God conversation is not a compelling one. It's an inspiring one.
It's a natural.
Exactly. It inspires people. God is not this policeman. I don't know whether I've told you the story. There's one of the stories that I read somewhere, and I enjoy telling the story when I was speaking to people of this boy whose mother says to him, eat broccoli. And it is, if you know children struggle eating broccoli. So this one day, this child eats, and the child says, no. I can't eat broccoli. I don't care what the mother says. And the mother says, I'm going to do, when you don't follow your parents, God is going to be angry with you. The boy says, no, I'm not going to eat this. And then later on in the afternoon, it rains and the boy is in his room and there's a thunderstorm. And the boy sits next to God and says, you are
Talking to God.
I can remember now trying to interpret the lightning. This lightning now is God must be angry, and he must be angry because I didn't eat this broccoli. So sometimes in our own way of trying to make children do that which we believe is right, we end up creating prisons, and God becomes this angry being in their life that then they don't have a loving relationship with, but a fear relationship with. And therefore they are sitting there and angry. And it takes me to that part. When we're at Friday, there's another story that is told of a teacher who says, draw anything that you want to draw. And children draw, so others draw that and others draw that. So he goes desk by desk. And then he says to the child, my child, what is this? And they see some image. And this child says, it is God. And the teacher looks at the child. God, but nobody has seen God. And nobody knows God. And the child asks, from today they are going to know God. Because that's the picture of God that they have. The point I'm making also is to allow the children's imagination to be part of the creative experience of God. Rather than forcing them to know God this way,
in a certain way,
we allow them to discover God, and we journey with them in their discovery of it. It will not be perfect. It probably not even be theologically sound, but that's how they will understand God. That's how they will see God. And sometimes they're going to be angry with God. I know of a story of a child who was told that Santa is going to bring presents to her. She was in Cape Town, and the mother is in Joburg. Santa is going to give present to the child. And the mother forgot that the child, it's Christmas. She wrote, and the child, and then Christmas morning, the child goes and checks, what did Santa bring me? She goes to the list, and now boom, Santa didn't bring anything. And the parents said, goodness me, I forgot to put all these things here. And then she said, no, Santa knows that your Santa delivered in your address in Joburg.
Okay.
And it's December. So the mother forgets. It's 15 days later. The child comes to Joburg. The child says, where are they? And she writes a letter to Santa. Santa, you are unfaithful. You do not keep your promises.
Who's writing
And the child, you promise that you are going to give me these gifts. Here in Johannesburg, you have not. I am not happy with you. Actually, I'm angry with you. So how do you allow children then to journey with that?
Yeah.
Even when they
That
want to say
disappointment.
yes, even what they want to say to God. Because if you can just replace Sunday with God, that child might say, God, you didn't keep your promise.
Exactly.
So how do you allow
my mother
Exactly.
did not keep the promise.
So how do you allow the child then to grow with that journey of
Yeah.
them learning to discover, trusting the imagination and the instinct of children, and using that as a base of formation and discovery of what it is to be a child, what it is to be God. Don't expect the child to behave like you.
Of course.
Allow the child. Now that's dangerous because I normally say to people, if you allow children to, if you have an image of children being in the creative space, don't be surprised if chemicals explode because they are mixing up chemicals.
Yes.
You can't have children playing in your kitchen and don't expect the kitchen to be dirty.
It's yeah, it comes with it.
So you need to be exposed. The children will experiment.
Yeah.
They are going to go overboard there. They are going to create
And you might
mess
have
there.
to kill some fire.
Exactly. So how do you allow that then to be the journey? And part of that journey is they learn to trust their instinct.
Of course.
They learn to trust their judgment. They learn to trust their own summation of what's happening in the world. Because now they're learning to say, okay, this makes sense to me. Obviously with your teaching, with your values, with their limitations, all the kind of stuff that goes out. And then the last thing I want to say about that, we need to have to teach our children to know that the world owes them nothing. They are not born with some demands that they're going to give to the world. They are born with an opportunity to offer the world something. So part of the learning is to say, I don't go out there because the world owes me. I'm going out there to shape the world into what it can be. So you are not a receiver of the world. You are a contributor to the world.
My goodness.
And therefore, you are not a passenger waiting for service delivery. You're an agent who shapes the world, who contributes to that world. Your creative juices, you're playing with puzzles, you're playing with Legos, your games that you play. All of that are skills and opportunities that you are honing. So at given moments, you contribute to making the world. You don't go out there and think, okay, the world
The world needs to deposit in me.
Yes.
I like that. So it's us, nurturing and watering the flower or the tree. Not necessarily that I'm the one who's going to reap from the tree, but then the shade is going to be even for my neighbors.
Exactly.
So that's how we actually should, when we nurture our own children, that they should know that it's for them to contribute positively into the world. As we draw to a close, Reverend Molo, this is a very interesting topic. I think we need to expand on it. How do we as parents, can we cultivate a sense of appreciation and gratitude to our children beyond material things?
I want to start, I'm going to use a big word here. I've said love, isn't it? But there's another word that is big, it's called discipline.
Okay.
And by discipline, I don't mean violence. By discipline, it is helping the child know consequence management. That in what I do, there are consequences. If I'm loving, there are consequences. If I'm hating, there are consequences. If I'm rude, there are consequences. Because indeed, there are consequences of these things. If I don't self-limit, there are consequences. So how do we instill discipline? And discipline comes with sharing of information, showing the possibilities, showing the outcomes, and sometimes being strict enough without losing love to say, this will not happen here. This you will not get. Whether you want to do this. Now, children nowadays, there's a big problem. There is public expression that they struggle with within the family discipline. What do I mean by that? There are things that I tell my friends that I can do, I can get. And that creates, or I see them do that, and that creates pressure on me, publicly, socially, there with them. And then I carry that into the home. So when I say no,
Put pressure, unnecessary pressure on parents now.
on parents, but also on yourself.
On yourself.
Now remember, if we've done a great job to make you feel loved and sufficient, we have mitigated against that. Because you would know you don't need your friend's approval
Yes.
for this. If you don't have it, you don't have it. If,
It's okay.
if your parents are not driving XL, you are fine. But if the child has not learned to love themselves unconditionally, therefore the pressure is going to speak. So how do we make sure that discipline is part of this? Sometimes we say no. Now some of us go with parents who indeed you would use violence in part of that disciplinary process. And in all honesty, some of us look back and think to ourselves, goodness me, if she didn't do that, I'd probably be in a mess now.
Exactly.
My life would have been better. I'm not advocating for violence. But how then do you create a disciplined structure? And that structure must be the structure that somebody says, I know my mom will not want this. I know my dad will not approve of this. That allows the child then to carry the discipline into their spaces because they know why you don't want what that is. So how do you keep that? Because without discipline then, you create a sense of loving that is irresponsible. Irresponsible loving is just allowing people to do what they want to do, and you think you're loving them, but you're contributing to irresponsible behavior. So how do you find a way to do that? And therefore, before I come to the point, when I come to the point to make, parents must be careful that they are not compensating for their own lack.
What they didn't have
Yes.
during their upbringing.
Yes. There are things that
Because
parents...
we do that even in careers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are things that I wanted as a child, and I didn't get them, and I made a vow. My child will never be without, and whatever without might mean. So therefore we are compensating for our lack. And we create then a fragile child who connects with things rather than beings, rather than human beings. And the truth is, you lie to yourself as a parent because you think they love you because of this thing.
Exactly. And in fact, I'm sorry, Reverend Molo, I was looking for that word earlier on, that we might create a fragile being sometimes when we create over-dependence.
Yes. So how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do you teach the child? I've got a wonderful book around children and whatever. It's called The Low Esteem Trap: How to Teach Your Child to Be Happy with Being Ordinary.
With being ordinary, my goodness.
I mean, that book is one of the best books I've ever read. How do you get satisfied with your ordinariness? Why do you want to be the exceptional?
Exactly.
Why do you allow yourself to be trapped in this idea that I must be the exceptional one?
And do you know the ordinary also speaks not only in the you being the person or what you are able to contribute, but even with your appearance.
Exactly.
Because that's what I taught my kids.
Exactly.
That you actually don't need earrings growing up for you to feel that you are beautiful. You are beautiful as you are.
Exactly.
Your natural hair, you are beautiful.
And therefore, by the way, even if you do those things, they are, what's the word I'm looking
They're
for?
not adding anything to you.
No, let's be nice. They do. They do. Let's be nice.
But okay.
I mean, let's take different. If you don't comb your hair,
Yeah.
if you come with your hair that allows, no.
I
If you
get that.
if you don't wash your face,
I get that.
if you don't wash your mouth, no. But the point I want to make is that it is accessory. What
Accessories.
Now, what is an accessory? It is something extra.
Yes,
It is not
the
the core.
extras, yeah.
It is not the core.
Yeah.
The core is beautiful.
Yes.
The core is beautiful. But when I want a six-pack, I want a six-pack because, I mean, it's not comfortable to have this thing. But I want a six-pack not because I don't love myself. It is just going to accessorize that which is there.
Enhance my
Exactly. So I don't want this impression that people say, because indeed it does. But if the accessories are hiding place for your own inadequacy,
then it's a problem.
none of them will be enough.
Yeah.
None of them will be
Exactly.
enough. None of them will be enough.
You will still wear these labels, and you know those people who still feel the need. When you tell me that I look beautiful, I need to tell you what brand am I wearing.
Not only that, I say this to young women. Be careful when you give authority over to a boyfriend, for example. When he says you are the most beautiful thing on earth and your emotions rise, be careful. Because you are giving authority and power over his words over you. Because the next day he comes and says to you, I don't like these people.
Yeah.
Your world collapses. You look and say, Chomi, when I in, do you see? And then Chomi says, I keep on in there. Man, Chomi, Chonga, man, Chomi. And then he says, I see a small. Oh, and then that people becomes big.
Yeah.
And then you spend your whole life trying to sort it out, and you're trying to do this thing. So if you can teach our children to, there was a song. I'm not the girl in the video. Who was it? There's a beautiful song. Just forgotten the lady now who sings it. There's Alicia Keys who came, and there was another lady who came during the time of Alicia Keys. She likes to wear afro. She refused to be defined by one of the songs, Brown Skin.
Oh, brown skin, yes.
So she used to. Her music was, I'm not the person you see on the video.
Okay.
I've got my freckles.
Yeah.
I've got my big nose, or
Yeah.
that's who I am, something
Yeah.
like that. So how to help children then to embrace who they are? And I don't want them to feel guilty about if I want to change my hair now, I want to do that. I don't think that's how far I want to go. But the point I'm saying is parents must be very careful to substitute, to overcompensate for their own lack. When I struggle with this, I'm going to make sure that my children do not struggle.
Does not.
But by the way, struggling builds character.
Yes.
If you don't allow your children to struggle, you are not building character. And therefore part of life is struggling. And therefore part of, we need to be very careful of that, so that we do not over-create a smooth running of life that children don't go. Then the other thing I say to parents, please be careful as parents of taking your children's lives vicariously.
Okay.
This is how I want it to be. This is the thing I want to be. So you live your life through your child.
Through this child.
You shape your child
Yeah.
as you want it to be. That is a burden that any child should not carry. Because every child must have, and this happens, I want to say this to parents who are very successful. Be aware that your success can be a burden for your child.
My word.
Because they get shaped by your success. Society sees them through your success. They carry the burden
That now
to
they have to
prove
surpass.
that they are your peers, they are like you. How do you allow your child to have their own path of self-discovery? You can't hide what you are. You are a president of South Africa. You can't say to your child, I'm not the president of South Africa.
Yeah.
But how do you are Muruti? You can't say I'm not a Muruti. How do you live with your child in a manner that allows your child to search for themselves?
And be comfortable with
And
the
when they
discovery they made.
and when they struggle with your success, accept that. Don't think that your child is being funny, silly.
Yeah.
That because you are, and I can give you examples. Lionel Richie's children. Look at these superstars, children. They don't know how to be because everything is shaping them around this image,
The
of
image, yeah.
this person. So how do you allow your children, I mean, on a simple level, how do you allow your child, I'm not saying she must do that. How do you allow your child to say, when the child says, I'm 22, I want a glass of alcohol. I want to take a glass of wine.
Oh.
I'm old enough and I'm responsible enough.
When we get to restaurants and then we are offered the menu of alcohol, and then I'm like, no, thank you, we're not going to need this. And they like, says who? You did not ask us
Exactly.
because they are now over 18, all of them.
Exactly. What do you do with your child who wants to have a party with their friends in the yard?
In the
And this
men's
party,
yard.
yes. And this party will have alcohol because their friends drink. I'm not saying I'm talking about I'm talking about I'm not advertising alcohol. I'm saying how do you journey with children as they discover who they are?
I like that, Reverend Molo, because it's very practical. I had to face that recently. They asked me, in fact, their friend asked me, Muruti, let's say I want to have a glass of wine while I'm in your house, like you guys like having me around, or even when we go out. And quite frankly, I said, that would make me uncomfortable. And I would not have to pay for alcohol with my money. You drinking in my presence, I'm not saying you should not drink, but drinking in my presence would make me very uncomfortable.
You must ask yourself why that is. Because if you trust your child to be responsible, then let's forget the other parent. If you trust your child to be responsible,
They should do it in your presence.
one, two, you must trust them on this also. Your view of alcohol is your view of alcohol. Why do you transport that view
On them.
to this child, whom you believe is responsible,
Yeah.
whom you believe can control themselves, whom you believe they are capable of?
It's because we also learned that from you.
Yes.
You being much
Yes.
older than me, that if you were to drink, you would drink in a cup like this,
Yes.
and pretend as if you're drinking tea in front of your parents.
Yes.
You would not do it in front of your parents.
And that's the point. And where I'm going to, I don't want this meeting to get up to me because it's going to end up with alcohol because they're going to think we are advertising alcohol. The point I'm trying to get to is that part of the journey for children to grow up is self-discovery.
Yeah.
It is learning to learn. There's no greater gift you can give the child than the child who has learned to have their own personal morality
Certainly.
clear for themselves, and they know what to do in your absence. The greatest test for a parent is not what the child does in their presence.
It's the same with the lead. I said that for this church to run the way it runs
Yes.
right now, it should run even in my presence,
Yes.
in my absence. That's when I would say I'm the greatest leader.
Exactly. So the child can only exercise their maturity in your absence.
In my absence, true.
And part of that then is to learn to invest enough in them for them to build the moral character, the moral fiber that allows them to be the best human being outside there. So that even if you come and they're not aware you are here, you are able to watch them
Exactly.
and say
still
to them.
be happy.
And part of that means I know their intentions are good. I know they respect people. I know they love themselves. I know they love other people. I know they're hard workers. I know they're dedicated. I know when they make mistakes, they pause and say, this is not how it should be, even before I come in, and then learn how to grow and be different like that. The issue of gifting children is one that I say, simply be careful of using gift as a trade. What do I mean by
that you do this, I give this.
Yes. And I'm giving you this because you've done that. I'm giving you this because you've done that, or whatever else. If it's a trade, it's a bargaining process. And then children are going to bargain with you. And when they bargain with you, then you're not going to win. But if you give because you think that's the right thing to
You
do,
feel like giving.
remember we said, let them know your heart rather than know the things. So when you hold them and you hug them, that might be the best gift you can give them. Because there they know, my mother loves me and my mother is happy for my achievement. But if you arrive late and then you just give them that gift, no matter how wonderful that gift is, the child knows you did not want to be here. And therefore you are blinding her from the fact that you're absent. So try and make sure that the gifting is one that reflects you, your heart, rather than the thing that you give. Where they are both parents, try to make sure that you do not, children are observant. And parents think they're clever. Parents think when you want this, the parent says, no, whatever else they say. Soon enough, children learn to know who is the decider here.
Yeah.
And therefore, the children are going to go to the one. Because that's the one who decides.
Yeah.
Because every time we ask for this, when I've done something wrong,
Who's the disciplinarian?
who's the one who's going to make noise? The one who's going to do that. Now, there is an element of that because you as parents will not have the same character. There are things that you look at as a partner. Ngwana o dirile phoso fela. Ngwana o fitile the salt fell. Ka phoso ngwana o. So you can think it's that. And really children know this. When Papa must be angry to appease mama.
Yeah.
the children get so and so we are trying to appease them. So how do you make sure at the most fundamental level, children don't see you competing
With
for their affection?
yeah.
Because once they know you're competing for their affection, they're going to play
They're going to
you
play
on
it.
that. Let the environment then be environment of care, love, and God is going to permeate through that. And the church then supplements, and the school supplements, community supplements. Oh, before I leave this, now you're going at the time where we say don't speak to strangers, and I said that. But part of our own upbringing is the reality that everybody in the street or in the community is a parent. How do we make sure that our respect and our lessons are learned in that environment? So although my family is my primary place, that family is also supplemented by what is happening next door. Now, in these days now, people don't know each other's house because there are fences. But I know that children of these days, Nalibo auntie, who they know as friends to their mothers. So how to incorporate all of that as a way of bringing up children. It's a difficult thing to do. Very last one. Parents have this tendency to evaluate their parental skills by what their children choose to do. That's the most dangerous thing to do. You can love and you must love your child all you have. But there's a time when your child makes a decision because they can make the decision. And that decision sometimes got little to do with you. They have made that decision. So therefore parents have a way of saying, if my child misbehaves, it must be because of a bad parent. And then they panic, they overcompensate, they fight for this thing. Sometimes, like God, you just have to allow people to make the choices they do. And all you can do is simply to love them. And without you thinking to yourself, oh, it must be that I'm a bad parent. I've seen parents struggle. Others have got 5 children. 4 of them have turned well. And there's only one. And I've heard their prayers. What have I done to God? Why is it? Release yourself. Love your child. Form their being. Let that formation influence their behavior. Let their choices be inspired by who you see them to be. And let them live their life. And that's the best thing we can offer them.
Wow. Thank you, Reverend Bolo, and thank you so much for watching. This is one thing that is challenging to raise children. There's never a method or even a formula. Yes, we read books, but they can never provide that structure, and we know that this is how the child is going to come out. But the best thing that you've heard from Reverend Molo that one can do is to just reveal God's heart to your child love your child the best way that you can, and continue to pray for your children, whether no matter how big they are, no matter how small they are, and allow them just to be. Then they will turn out to be these people that God has created them to be. Thank you so much for watching.